video, we're going to talk about what studying actually means, especially in a math class. This might sound like a simple question, but it's actually really important. A lot of students say things like, I studied for hours, but I still did not do well on the exam, or I looked over my notes, but the test felt totally different. If that's ever happened to you, you are not alone. It does not mean you're bad at math. It may simply mean that the way you were studying was not giving your brain enough practice doing the kind of thinking the exam asked you to do. So, let's start with this idea. Studying math is not just looking at math. Studying math means actively working with math. There's a big difference between watching someone solve a problem and solving a problem yourself. There's also a big difference between rereading an example and trying a similar problem without looking at the answer. When you study for math, your goal is not just to recognize something when you see it. Your goal is to be able to do something with it. That might mean solving an equation, graphing a line, simplifying an expression, interpreting a word problem, using a formula, explaining your reasoning, or deciding which method makes sense for a new problem. So, what does real studying look like? A strong math study session usually has 4 parts. First, you review. This is where you look back at your notes, examples, textbooks, videos, or homework. You remind yourself what the topic is. You look at the main ideas. You notice important steps, formulas, vocabulary, or patterns. Reviewing is useful, but reviewing by itself is usually not enough. The second part is practice. This is where the real learning happens. You choose problems and try them yourself. Not just with the answer sitting right next to you. Not just while copying the steps from a video. You actually try the problem. And this is where many students get nervous, because practicing can feel uncomfortable. You might get stuck. You might make mistakes. You might realize you do not understand something as well as you thought. But that is not failure. That is information. In fact, one of the most useful moments in studying is when you get stuck and can say, okay, this is the part I need to work on. The third part is checking. After you try a problem, you need to check your work. This might mean comparing your answer to the answer key, reviewing the solution, asking a tutor, checking with a classmate, or going back to your notes. But checking does not just mean, did I get the right answer? It also means asking, did my steps make sense? Where did I make a mistake? Was this an arithmetic error, an algebra error, or a misunderstanding? Could I do this again without help? That last question is important. If you can follow a solution while you're looking at it, that is a good start. But if you can do a similar problem later without looking, that is a stronger sign that you are learning. The fourth part is adjusting. Once you check your work, you decide what to do next. Maybe you need to try some more problems like that one. Maybe you need to rewatch a video. Maybe you need to ask a specific question. Maybe you need to review an earlier skill like fractions, negative numbers, or solving equations. Studying is not just putting in time. Studying is noticing what is working and what needs to change. So, here is a simple study cycle that you can use. Step 1, review a topic. Step 2, try a few problems without notes. Step 3, check both your answers and your steps to solve that problem. Step 4, identify what confused you. In step 5, try again with a similar problem. That cycle is much more powerful than only rereading notes for an hour. Now, let's talk about a common trap. Some students spend a lot of time doing things that feel like studying, but do not actually prepare them for the exam. For example, rereading notes, highlighting examples, watching videos, looking over homework, and copying solved problems. These can all be helpful, but only if they lead to active practice. Watching a math video is helpful when you pause it and try a problem yourself. Reading your notes is helpful when you close them and see what you can do from memory. Looking over homework is helpful when you redo missed problems and explain what went wrong. The goal is not to avoid mistakes while studying. The goal is to make mistakes early enough that you can learn from them before the exam. That is a much better place to make mistakes, during practice, not for the first time on test day. So, how do you know if you are really studying? Here are a few good signs. You are solving problems without looking at every step. You are checking your answers and correcting mistakes. You can explain why a step works in your own words. You are noticing patterns in the types of problems. You are writing down questions to ask later. And you are trying again after getting something wrong. That is studying. And remember, studying does not have to be perfect. You do not need a fancy system. You do not need 5 hours of free time. You do not need to feel confident before you begin. You can start with one topic and 3 problems. For example, you might say, today I'm going to review solving linear equations. I will look at one example, try 3 problems without notes, check them, and write down one question if I get stuck. That is a real study session. Before we finish, here is your action step. Choose one topic from your math class. Then do this. Start by reviewing one example. Then try 2 or 3 similar problems without looking at the solution. Then check your work. And finally, write down one thing you understand better and one thing you still need to practice. That is a strong start. And remember, studying math means doing math, checking your thinking, learning from mistakes, and trying again. You are not expected to understand everything immediately. Math learning takes practice. But with the right kind of studying, you can make progress. Start small. Be honest about what you know. Ask for help when you need it. And remember that every problem you work through is helping you build stronger math skills. You've got this.